Hello and welcome back to MBTV. Today's topic is Enneagram 3. We've covered this in the past quite a bit, but I do want to get you guys a good understanding of Enneagram 3, spoken from potentially two Enneagram 3s here, as long as we don't have any technical difficulties. Obviously, Daniel is someone who's Enneagram 3, and I have a very prominent 3 in my particular tri-type, so I'm sure I can contribute to this discussion as necessary. But one of the big things I want to start this off with is the Enneagram 3 can get mixed up with any other type. There's a lot of people out there who think that they're not a 3. And
am I a 3?
Well, that's up to you. But there's a lot of people who think they're not a 3, and the reason why is the 3 is the chameleon of the group in the Enneagram. It can model anything, it copies anything. If something is needed to be successful, the 3 will pick up on it and do it. And so 3 is their biggest issue is deceit, and it's because they lie to themselves, and they think they are a particular thing, and they're being deceitful. So the 3 can appear as any other type. If a particular community, job, or whatever requires the 3 to be super friendly, the 3 will pick on that persona, take it on, and actually become that. And to where they become so identified with it that all of a sudden the 3 is thinking they're the 2. Or if they're thinking that they're a 1. There's a few things that you can use to distinguish a 3, though. If you're not, I don't care what anybody says. If I really think about it, looking at somebody, it's not going to be easy to identify if someone is a 3 or not, other than the fact that they are success-driven. But, I mean, there's a lot of people in any other Enneagram types that are success-driven, too. 3s usually have a very profound sense of optimism, tend to look at things in a positive manner, kind of the power of their positive thinking. They tend to think things will work out for the better as long as they work hard for it. So you'll see some of those traits in the 3, regardless of what type they may be emulating at any given moment. But 3s are really hard to spot because they can be emulating other types. This is the type that's most known. It's in the center of the image center or feeling center. So it's a particular type that will more than likely chameleonize with anything else. So that being said, Daniel, or Blake, if you want to share anything about your particular experiences being 3s and some of the things that you may have struggled with.
Yeah, I have a couple of things to say. Can you hear me loud and clear?
Yep, everything's good.
All right, great, fantastic. So a lot of what you're saying is very true, like the inner battle to be authentic, as we've discussed in prior events. However, in my experience, being a chameleon, in my direct sense, when I relate to the Enneagram, I relate more to the type 4 than I do the type 2. I always, like, I know that I am different from others, and I always try to either stand out or be a little different. And though I may kind of naturally fit into and synchronize myself to like a group, I always have my own originality, my own essence that I bring to the table. And I guess when maybe like you're younger or you have just learned to identify with totally losing yourself, that's one thing. But I've always learned to kind of just be yourself authentically in every situation, despite what I pick up on, Yeah, but for a type 3, I mean, you've met me in person, so I mean, you can kind of see how it may, for a brief time. I mean, obviously you can't kind of gauge like my whole existence based off of a little time, but it's almost like, I think when the cool thing about Enneagram, like being a type 3, is like it's always like a challenge day by day. Like I wake up and I'm like very cognizant of what I want to work on personally, when I take Enneagram into consideration, and being a type 3, being success driven and shying away from things I can just totally submerge myself in, which is just work, learning how to like step back and appreciate myself, appreciate that, like, I don't need to always work to be enough. I don't always need to work, although I may have my mission and I may be relentless in trying to get that mission. So many people have just told me, you don't always have to work. You can do other things. I'm like, yeah, you know, work hard, play hard, but there's no middle ground for me, and I'm trying to create that middle ground, that middle space, because I think that's where I think I'll find my happiness, and I'm always trying to get to that point. So being a type 3, like any Enneagram type, I think if you become aware enough, is you would be able to want to pursue kind of a balance within your type. And you know, everybody's going to be different, like, with, you know, so different, you know, you and your own variables at play, whatever they may be. You want to identify what your balance would look like and then engage that. So that's what I have to say for now.
Trey, I know you've been studying Enneagram 3 lately. So, what are your insights? What have you yielded out of your current studies of Enneagram 3?
Well, I mean, I was just thinking about 3 recently, and about how they always project a you know, I mean, it's pretty simple. Like, you look at a type 3 and you see them projecting an image, and you're like, oh, okay, well, is this really them? And if you know the person, a lot of times you can just look at it and be like, no, not really. But what I had always talked about in my Enneagram 3 video was just that they're really just rejecting their identity to be loved, to be recognized and seen, heard, to have some kind of connection just with somebody. You know what I mean? Just feeling loved. And a lot of times 3s may, you know, portray an image that they don't need anybody or something like that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it makes no sense to be like, oh, like, I'm going to portray this image of being a tough, you know, I don't need anybody kind of person. But at the same time, like, that's what they're doing it for. They want to be seen as that person so that they can experience, like, appreciation or love for being that person. So I don't know. I just recently I've had a few encounters with type 3s, and it had to do with somebody that was specifically trying to, I think they were upset that day, or they were dealing with something, and they ended up putting me in a position where, like, they were helping me, and, like, they were trying to tell me that I had a problem and, like, all this stuff. And so I'm trying to, like, figure out what they're doing and trying to, like, engage and stuff. But what I kept finding was that this person was just making up a bunch of crap. And, you know, if, like, you're going to help somebody, it was just, I'm talking about this because it was something specific I noticed. Like, you know, for me, I noticed that, like, he was trying to help me, but wasn't asking questions to help. But what I found was that he was creating stuff for me, like my
Hey,
identity.
Trey.
I know it's weird. Hold on, no, I know. I'm like super space, and it was hard to understand that. But just give me a second. The idea was that type 3s create identity to be loved, right? This guy was literally creating identity for me. Like, he was literally sitting here trying to map out how I am. And I just want your thoughts on that.
I used to do that when I was way younger, but I obviously grew out of that for obviously healthy reasons. It's ridiculous that would happen. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, but then the thing is, like, how do you approach them? Because if you say, hey, this is what you were doing to me, they don't want to be seen as that. So they're going to revert to some kind of, like, no, that's not what I do. I actually always try to do that for this. You know what I mean? Like, how do you tell them?
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. I mean, honestly, I think that back in the day, if I was doing that, or I found myself even doing that today, you know, the easiest thing to do is to just say, hey, you know, I just realized that, like, you know, I understand you're trying to help me, but you're not asking me any questions, like you just said. And it's really cool to, like, it's easy to break ice like that with a type 3. You know, it doesn't necessarily mean resistance when you would bring up, it's not confrontational, but like when you bring presence like that, right? Like if I was doing that to you, like, hey, sure, I think that you should be a truck driver, and here's why. And like I start going in on why I think you should be a truck driver, and then out of nowhere you're like, hey Dan, you know, you've been talking like 20 minutes straight, and like I don't even know if you knew this, but you know, like it's just you talking. So like, why do you want me to be a truck driver?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
That's
It
what
just
happened.
totally,
I was like,
yeah.
you didn't even ask me if I wanted to be a truck driver. Like, so I wanted to know what you guys thought about that, because sometimes, like, you know, you see people deflect their the struggle they have on other people, like type ones. They put a lot of pressure on themselves, and then sometimes, like, to relieve themselves of that feeling, they do it to other people, and they make other people, like, you know what I mean? They pressure other people and criticize other people. And so just with a 3, I thought it was interesting, like, that deflection could possibly mean that they were like creating an identity for me, trying
I
to tell
think
me what I am.
I think, and this is just a theory based off of my own experience and what I've known in other type threes. I think when type threes, I think, if you can imagine, right, there's like a spectrum between totally lost self, balanced self, and you know, the opposite of lost self, found self. No, I'm sorry. There's lost self, found self. In the middle is like where that guy is, where he was talking to you, the gray area, right? The middle of the spectrum involves like a purgatory where, you know, where are you as a type 3? Do you know yourself? Do you know your sense of authentic person and self? So I think a lot of type 3s, when they're in a space, like in a purgatory space of not knowing who they are, they want to help other people identify with themselves, even though they already know what they identify with. And like they'll at the little moment that somebody may seem like they're having an identity crisis, I think a type 3 would just kind of like jump in there and try to help them out and try to find themselves in the process, or kind of help themselves through their own situation, which is totally unhealthy. But you know, I think that when type 3s get into space and they try to help is when they're actually most harmful. When they're not, you know, and I honestly think it comes from a place of, in that moment, they're transitioning to a different kind of identity. And so they're trying to instill through, like, you know, being in their environment with whoever, trying to find themselves through others. And you know, it's kind of like a very volatile position. I mean, at least when I was in that stage, like I remember some moments when I was like 17, 18, 19, and I really had an issue with people and having a sense of, you know, like I was really opposed to people being police officers, and I was really opposed to people being politicians or doing something that I didn't feel like that would fit them most. And I just had huge issues with people who wanted A, but they were totally B, C, or D. And I'm like, why? Right? I'm like, this doesn't fit you at all. Like, at all. Like, you want to be a doctor, but like you have like that shaky hand thing, like, or you know what I mean? Like something really basic like that. And so like
Yeah.
for me, so it's like weird because like growing up, like for me it was like clear as day, like the routes, like, and like it was unhealthy, but at the same time, you know, I had some kind of intuitive insight into like what people would be naturally great at doing, or you know, the different, like the layer of purpose that they were at. And so it was really conflicting, because in this moment for me personally, it was like, all right, cool, I'm trying to find myself, but at the same time I want to help all these people find their purpose. So like there's a lot of like relentless, like, you know, um no filter to like people's own journey, kind of like what you're explaining. But after a while I just, I'm like, you know what, you want to do that, you know, do that, you know, if it's going to make you happy, you know, it's all part of the journey anyway.
Do you
And
think
there
it's
was a lot.
because, sorry, do you think it's because if you have a struggle with finding out who you are, then you might say, okay, I'm going to be the guy that helps other people find out who they are, and then associate with that, so that you feel like, because if you have issues with that, you know what I mean, and that's something you deal with, then if you could help everybody deal with that, you know what I mean, if you could help everyone with their problem, like, it would just be like it would be an image you're associating with. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, when I think about that time versus where I am now, right? Like, so there's times, it's here and there, right? So when when an unhealthy 3 is trying to do it, obviously, you know, and when they're in their environment talking to somebody, and when they're not, so when they're engaging with people about, you know, wherever they may be, it's an unhealthy thing, obviously. When a type 3 is healthy and they're engaging with people, it's way more it's just way more authentic. And so like a great example, like where I am personally right now, I would never do that. Even if I did have like a transitional stage, you know, I would still talk to people knowing in a healthy place, even though I don't, maybe I am having a transitional identity thing. I would know what I'm doing, right? More alert of it than I am than I was like 4 or 5 years ago, you know, when I was like 18, 17. Now I'm aware of like, hey, you know, everything in my external reality is really not about me. It's just a reflection of me and what I'm going through. So, you know, there's actually more of an internal kind of processing more than external processing as I get older, versus when I was younger, it was more external. And then once I connected to everything that I can touch in reality, then I would go and shelter myself and figure out what that all meant to me. Although that's very selfish and very, 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 just very selfish sounding, you know, it is what it is. You know, type threes go through, and sometimes it may not even be unhealthy for, although it is unhealthy in those stages for a type three, you know, the person that the type three may talking to, it may actually help them, right? Like a lot of my experience, you know, I was never like the guy that you were talking about, but I would help a lot of people. You know what I mean? Like I would make conversation with like a random like sales associate that I'm talking to. And we're talking about life, and I'm like, yeah, man, you need to get out of this job, do this, this, or that. Like, what do you like doing? Oh, that's cool. What about this? Oh, all right. And so like I would totally engage with somebody and try and help somebody out. I did have periods of a situation like that, but it was mostly like constructive. You know, I do have those moments even now a little bit, but I mean, I think overall now, I think what type threes, I mean, to help type threes, if you're watching this call, you know, what you can take from this is like, if you're young and you're a type three who is having you know, you still have like an identity thing going on and you're trying to find yourself within your sense of purpose and matching that into reality. I think it's actually good for a type three, not really involving social variance. Like regardless of social variance, I think a type three needs to be by themselves a ton. A ton. And I say that because without that time to yourself, I think type threes really don't really get to engage in thoughts that wouldn't be there unless like they were totally engaging. So I'll give you an example. Like a type three could never think about themselves and their identity if they're around people, right? They can never do that unless they had that time to themselves without people, you know, interfering with that mental space. And I found that like just growing up, I guess I was to appreciate the times of extreme introvertedness that I had. And then I just got used to over time. Like I love my periodic times of going off the grid for like a week and then coming back being like, hey guys, I was thinking just a lot to myself lately. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
as I get older, I just learned to like give myself more of that downtime to process, because it's so easy for me to identify with my external reality that I need time to differentiate what is me and what is not me, and then come back to it. You know, without that balance and trying to get that alone time and process stuff and enjoy myself, and not disconnecting from my external reality. Like I think it's very unhealthy if type threes connect too much to their professional work year round. I think type threes definitely need to balance that time between the people that they are affected with at work and the people in their lives that they choose to keep in their lives. Because to a type three, I think people are a huge benefactor to what either makes or breaks them. Regardless of how balanced you are and healthy you are as a type three, I think, you know, if you know your life is totally determinate as a type three, whether or not, you know, the kind of people that you have in your life, it makes or breaks you. And so like your decision making when it comes to your the social variables that you want in your life are so much more important than, let's just say, a type 9 or a type 2, right? It's on people for identity. And, you know, because identity creates your mindsets, and your mindsets create your decisions, and your decisions create your reality, right? So people in my life have always been a constant when it comes to my own personal development. you know, who's in my life, you know, who I allow to be in my inner circle, as I call it, or who I allow to be an acquaintance, or who I allow to talk to me, you know, being able to have control over that.
I was gonna say that when you said that for type 3 it's important to be introverted, I definitely agree with that, because I was actually just thinking about it recently. Like each Enneagram type, or at least a lot of them, I think it's important that they do that, because I was thinking to myself, I was like, you know, like all these people in like history, like, you know, they leave society and civilization, spend time to themselves, trying to sort things out, you know. And I was thinking, like, I think that's really good for a lot of the Enneagram types, because, you know, I don't know, I think it's mainly good for the image types, the 2, 3, and 4, because when they're away from everybody, they stop thinking about how they're coming off to others, and how, you know what I mean? And what it does, it allows them to just kind of be in a state where they're not trying to prove anything to anybody or receive anything from anybody or stand out from anybody. It's just them by themselves. And I was thinking it would be really good for them, because it would help them kind of just come to terms with themselves and who they are, without like the influence of the people around them, because they're all doing it for love in the end. So like, you know, what is it like if they're separate from everybody for a long period of time, then it kind of forces them to face themselves. And I would think for a long time, like me, I would think for a few months maybe, but
Yeah. No, and I think, you know, like, I think for some types, not like the image types, you know, getting out there is way more healthy. You know, it's all going to be determinant on, you know, what kind of type you naturally are. But I think
I mean,
for me,
the reason I said the head types wouldn't be a very good like head types wouldn't be a very good thing to like for them to go out like that, because the head types are sort of about survival. So like, I think that the head types are more likely. I don't know. I think it's better for them to uh, sort of be in a safe environment and be able to enjoy themselves, and like kind of recognize that they I don't know. I think it's way different for the head types. I don't really know what scenario would be best for head types. I just know that I don't think a survival situation or a place where, I mean, because I was kind of assuming that if you leave for 2 months, you're probably got like a tent, and you know, like you're trying to survive out there. So I wouldn't really send the head types out there, because that's kind of their focus in the beginning. But I don't know about the body types. I just know that the heart type specifically would be good for that, because they don't have people around them to influence that their identity or anything like that.
yeah, no, I think that makes sense. But as far as what we're talking about, I'm just trying to think if there's anything that I can like relate to. Um, is there anything else that you thought in particular I said was yeah, like I think honestly, that gray area that I was telling you about, where type 3s don't know what their identity is, and like the process of switching over to something else, I think that's when they're most catatonic, when they're most volatile. I think uh, if you know a type 3 is in a transitional, you have to remember like that stereotypical midlife crisis doesn't happen to a type 3. I think it happens every time they have a transitional period with their identity, which is all the, you know, not all the time, but like when it does happen, you know, it happens, right? Um, so I think it's important for type 3s to know that when you are in a place of, um, you know, being very intense with, because it's never subtle. When a type 3 is transitioning from identity to something that's more to themselves, or trying to understand that, I think that type 3 themselves get more and more intense.
I definitely see what you're saying. Just
yeah, like I'll give you an example. There's a type 3 that I knew that they were being a certain way in college, and then they flunked out of a really good school. So like they went from having this image of being a very great student to being like a very like spendthrift, like travelier, and just started traveling and spending money, and ended up and somehow just went from being very educational to being like a worldly experienced person until their money ran out. You know what I mean? And they went and then they did something else, and they try getting back into school. So when I think when type 3s transition, they go with a bang, right? Whereas I think for me, because I have that 9 my trifix, I think that I'm more subtle with my transitions. So it's like I kind of like it's like for me, I think I kind of slowly just enter a room and I'm like, I'm different,
Yeah.
And I'm like, and you guys, and I'm not gonna tell you why, but I'm just different,
Yeah, actually, no.
Like,
what you said made a lot of sense. Like, if I'm a type 3, for example, and I have a certain job, or let's say I identified with being able to help people, and I always, I'd spend a lot of times with friends, so that they would be able to tell me that, I was helpful to them and stuff like that. But then you move into a new job, and you start to like harness this identity, and your friends are like, what's going on? It might cause you to like look at yourself and say, whoa, I've really changed since I got this job. Like I used to think I was this. Like I used to think I was, the world's best like person at helping somebody. But now I'm,
you actually just sparked a thought from like that from like a really long time ago. That's actually very rare. Like I forgot about this memory. I used to be friends with somebody for like a very long time. We had like a 16-year friendship, and I grew up with this guy from like first grade, and I moved in with him. But the thing is, when we grew up together, we started being very different. He was way more conservative, and just way more of a kind of like caring for like his community, like naturally in his psychology. And I really wasn't about community at that time. I was really more about innovation, growing and growing as a person, and surrounding myself with people who wanted to grow. And so I saw him as like the very like antagonist to like what I was really trying to strive to be myself. Because when I got kicked out of my mom's house when I was 18, at that point, I really had not started my own personal growth journey because I was just kind of stuck. And so I kind of grew exponentially living with him. And so it was very frustrating for both of us to be still the same best friends, because I was growing every other week. And I remember him telling me, like, every time we'd be in the car and like we'd be catching up with each other, and he would just tell me all the time, like, wow, like where's like the Dan from like a week ago? Like so much has happened for you in just 1 week. And I'm like, yeah, man. And like slowly, like my progression really ended up like, it was kind of like we were like doing this together, and like the more like I was like this, he was like this, kind of like he I think over time more and more couldn't connect with me as much because I started growing into a different person. And I mean, honestly, to be totally honest, type 3s are known to be assertive, right? Trey? I think over time, yeah.
Yeah, assert their image.
Yeah. Well,
I was going to answer a question really quick, if you don't mind.
Oh, sure.
Someone asked earlier, which type do you think usually focuses least on proving their worth to others? And personally, I believe that's an 8, because the 8 already has it's like they have an understanding of their worth. So like, just as an example, and I think I've already used this on the channel, but I know somebody who was driving somewhere, and we were in the car with her, and she said, "Hey, you guys want to go eat at Whataburger?" And we were like, "No, we're good." And then the girl in the back seat was like, "If you want to go eat a Whataburger, you can go. And she's like, I know I can go, right? Like, it was like I know what I have the ability to do. Like, you know, it's almost like if you told them that they could or could not do something, it's like, are you kidding me? I already know what kind of power I have, like, you know, what I have the ability to do, what, you know what I mean? So like, almost like if someone were to deny you of a certain like human right, I feel like an 8 might be the first one to notice just inherently, like, because they know that, like, they know what they have the right to do. They know they have a very good sense of their own worth. So I don't think that they necessarily prove, or they don't really try to prove their worth to anyone, because it's like they know they don't need to. They already feel their worth. So that's the answer to that question.
Yeah. I just wanted to finish up my thought from before. So anyway, like you were talking about how type 3s really do change, like they could change quite rapidly, and that's where I had that memory triggered, where I remember that time in my life from 18 to 21, 22, I was growing so that I was like every week, every 2 weeks, people were like, wow. It wasn't just my best friend, it was other people as well. They were like, wow, like man, like, wait, you're not about this anymore? You're about that now? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, this is like a more like evolved way of seeing it, you know? So it's not like I just grew like with my image at that time over time, but it was more like I was growing conceptually over time. And a lot of people like really didn't, you know, it's just like, I guess people weren't used to me changing so frequently. Because when you think about it, you know, when you sign up to be friends with somebody, it's like, cool, like this is who they are. They're grounded in who they are. That's it. And, you know, for me, like I'm always going to be growing, even if I know, like, even though I know myself pretty well now, I'm still going to be different a month from now, 2 months from now. You know what I mean? And I think when people sign on for people to be friends, and to like, when you say, hey, I like that human, I want to be friends with that human being. You know what I mean? We're looking for something within our external reality to match our inner reality, right? So with my best friend anyway, it didn't work out because, you know, the more I grew, the less we connected. And just in general, I've found that, you know, I can really test when, you know, when somebody's like really authentic or not, when you just accept somebody for who they are, which really entails them changing over time. If they're growing, you know, in a correct way. You know, like, you know, for the time that I've known you, Trey, you've evolved, you know, a ton, even though it's been a little while. And you know, it's like I'm still kind of like, great, you're on your journey. Like, this is how you're different. You know, if you were totally different, let's just say, Trey, you were totally different tomorrow, right? Like you were just like, you had spiky hair, you had gel in your hair, you were wearing suits every day, right? I'd be like, whoa, Trey changed, right? It's like you've changed so significantly, but those are reasons, like, you know, those aren't the reasons why I'm friends with you, right? Like at a core level, I want to be friends with you because I know who you are, right? I get you, right? May change, you're still Trey. I like Trey. You know, that's your name. And, you know, and everything underneath that name is something that I signed up for, right? You know what I mean? And I see that you can grow as a person. And so I look for people who, you know, in my life who always want to either grow or come more to a realization than the last day, versus somebody who's just looking to have kind of like a comfort buddy in one niche area, right? Like if you know me to be a basketball player, like if I'm not a basketball player the next day, are we not going to be friends anymore? You know what I mean? And so I've run across a lot of those people, and I don't like those people because I don't look for comfort friends. I look for friends to take me out of that comfort. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
And no, I can see that.
That's why I'm not friends with a lot of people, because a lot of people are bullshitters. Yeah, I'm gonna have a checkers companion. I'm gonna have a bicycle companion. I'm gonna have a business companion. I have all these different kinds of friends, and fantastic. You know what I mean? But really about that.
Yeah, I mean, I asked myself, you know, who I am occasionally.
Yeah.
like what my identity is. And when I do, it usually comes down to some pretty simple things, just like, well, I know I'm this and I know I'm that, and I'm like, and sometimes I do this. It's you know, like sometimes I find myself going, oh no, I'm this and I'm that, like this is fresh, this is cool, this is great, this is that, and
you know
it's
what?
not true. And I see it while I'm saying it, and I'm like, come on, Trey, stop lying to yourself. Like, so
I think it's good to know like what will always stick around within you, but I think it's more important to realize what can change, right? Because for me, it's like, you know, I am totally fine saying that like everything about me can change tomorrow. You know, I find a sense of freedom in that. You know, I find a sense of freedom in evolving, right, and wanting different things and valuing. Like, you know, 3 years ago, I was like a huge like activist, right, and I really hated a lot of things like um, politically, geopolitically, world-wise. Like I believed in Illuminati. I believed that like the world was gonna end on 2012. Like I was like in such a weird place, and then out of nowhere, like I went from like, you know, that to like not really caring anymore, and like a lot of my positions have changed.
yeah,
You
once
know,
2012 hit, you were like, crap. You're like, it didn't
I'm
happen.
still here.
I'm not gonna be the
Yeah,
savior of the world. Like I have to figure something else out.
No, but like something that like really happened was like you know, it's just I always like my values always change. You know, my beliefs always change. You know, I'm always trying to see things in a more enlightened or different way than what I previously saw. It's almost like in every aspect of my life is a book, and I want that book I always want to go back at that one particular book and see it just a little differently. You know, there's a lot of people who will, like, let's just say their book, one of their books is their values, and then they always return back to that book and they find comfort, and then they find that that book is a safe haven, and like they don't want to change how they see that book. They just want to read the book and get the same messages. But that's not how you grow. And you know, when I see people in life who are like that, you know, it's one thing to stick with things that with work, but it's different to innovate and adapt to survive and to get more out of life. You know, because unless you're leading the exact lifestyle that you want, like you want to live in Boca on a beach and with like 10 different women, or with your family and live with your family and have like an ideal lifestyle that like you're really striving for, you know, your work isn't done, which means that you always got to reevaluate and innovate yourself as much as you have to innovate your external reality, which is the same thing, you know. So I have an extreme. That's my extreme. Like I have fads. I have like psychological fads. So like my fad right now is like having a distaste with people who don't want to move forward for themselves, and like this idea of being a disservice to yourself is a big thing for me right now. um, you know, people who are being like total like self-avoidant of like what they need to do for themselves, you know, that bothers me.
I have a question.
Yeah, so
You just you gave me a you know, like an epiphany thing.
I gave you an epiphany.
Yeah, you did.
I think that's the best gift you can give somebody is epiphanies. How cool is that? Like, whoa, you just gave me a brain explosion. Ah, you're welcome, man.
Yeah, no,
wear a condom next time.
Oh my god.
What was your epiphany?
Oh, dude, you gotta go back because you made me forget when you're giving me all this imagery. I don't like it.
I don't know.
Oh, you were saying you have begun with a distaste of other people's non-progress.
Disservice. Yeah, disservice.
Yeah, disservice to themselves. Well, I was gonna ask you what you thought about this, because I've actually heard a lot of Type 3s say that, and I never really noticed it until you said it again, and then it's just kind of like, dude, I keep hearing that. And
it's literally, it's like oil, and it's oil in my mouth. It's well, like so.
Let me tell you my thought on it there.
All right.
And I want to hear what you think. I was thinking maybe it's because the 3, you know, when they get into a new, when they start, creating a new identity and, associating themselves with different things, they see it as progress. And so like when they feel like their last identity was not sufficient and they move on to like a new persona, then when they do, they might like feel like they need to start creating their persona, you know what I mean? And if they see that other people aren't changing at the same time, then they might say that those people aren't, improving, you know what I mean? Or,
you know what, like I experienced that, but it's not in an unhealthy place. That sounds like what it is. What it sounds like right now and how you're explaining it is unhealthy in the sense that if a type 3 isn't kind of like resonating themselves, like a type 3 can do that. Like the way I do it, I like regardless of where I am, I always hold people accountable to that. Always. It's not like I from a job, like let's just say I go from a fireman to a psychologist, right? And then within that transition though, I'm like, wait, you guys haven't changed. Oh no, like you guys are bad. No. It's like throughout my whole life,
no,
seeing
it's not like you
it's
look at the same people. That's not what I meant. It's not
no,
like you're
all
looking
I'm
at the
saying,
farmers and saying,
yeah. No. All I'm saying is that it's always a constant. Right. And as I grow older, there's more and more accountability that I put on people, right? Especially when they're interacting with me. There's more and more accountability of how they're being to themselves, and so in that very mindset, it actually filters a lot of people out who are actually in the lower echelons of being negative, right? If you think about it, if you can think about that, right? Imagine all the people who have no self-worth. And then I say to myself, while I'm interacting with somebody, let's just say who has no self-worth, and I say, and this person's talking and they're being very like horrible to themselves. And I'm like, hey, listen, I'm not going to be around this anymore. Like this is very negative energy. I want to leave. Right. So there was a time where I was talking to people who are very, I guess you could call them like low vibratory as far as positive and negative. And, as I've been able to evolve the way that I understand my personal relationship with people, and then there's me, that dynamic has always been getting better, right? The people in my life have changed, and they always are changing to people that more resonate not with me, but they resonate more with themselves. And so maybe like hopefully 5 years from now, I'm resonating with people in my life, and like my inner circle are more people like Gandhi than they are with like somebody like, where they are now, right? If that makes sense. And it's not to say that people will not change within my inner circle or the people that I know. It's just that I want to know. It's just.
I'm just gonna go right by you.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. A little bit. So, the idea is that they're about to do a lot of loud sounds. So.
okay.
My point is that I always add people in, but I'm always being very.
All right, yeah, I'll go ahead and say something. No, but like what I was thinking when we're talking about it was just like with me, for example, and with a lot of people, if they get into work, they'll work and work and work and work and work, and then they'll go, like now I kind of have everything I needed, everything's kind of chill. You kind of get in a routine, things kind of slow down, and then here's another type 3 somewhere over here, and he just began his work. He looks at this other guy and he's like, yo, dude, like, why aren't you like completely changing everything, dude? You know what I mean? And the other guy's, well, like, because I've already, I'm situated.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? So that was kind of what I meant by that. It was just like, almost like, my thought was just, it had to do with you and how you were talking about, just looking at other people and be like, why aren't you changing and making progress? But it really just had to do with like your own like speed at the time.
It's almost as simple as like, let's just say you take 3 people on 3 paths, and like I'm on one of those paths, and the other 2 paths are people that I know, and I'm walking forward my path, right? Very, very like very easily visual, right? 3 paths, right? I'm going on my path, and I look behind me, and the two people behind me stopped, signifying like they personally are not growing anymore. Like they're just living in comfort.
Daniel, your
Which is
camera's really far up.
What?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Wait, can you hear me?
It's just that like I can hear you, but your camera's positioned so that I can't even see your mouth when you're talking.
Oh, all right. But anyway, my point is like when I look back and
Change it.
it's not even.
Just move it down
What?
a little bit. It'll be nice.
How about now? Anyway, it should be like I see myself fine.
Okay, but your head's like this in the frame.
All right, hold on. How about now?
That's pretty good. Back up a little bit though. Yeah.
Seriously. All right.
Yeah.
So my point is like at other people and like I'm on that and we're all on different paths, right? And I see that they've stopped. When I see people that have stopped on their path, their journey, which signifies that they've lost either a sense of purpose or they're not growing as far as growing and investing in themselves, that's what I have a problem with because I want to help them bring them forward and like help them just keep moving. So it's not about seeing them progress, but it's about them just keep moving on their journey. So when people pause, you know, and they're just like, you know, I'm comfortable with my job, you know, with the friends that I have and the opportunities that I have, and I don't really want to grow because there's no need. I'm good. I'm all good. You know, that's what I have a problem with because then they're doing disservice to then the world for not giving back their true, like, what they can truly give back. And they're not always growing that, right? I know.
Yeah.
Vacuum.
No. When you put the microphone up, the vacuum sounded like it turned off. Yeah. No, you're good.
Well, anyway, my point is like, you know, I believe that everybody has like an innate ability to give back to the world in a very big way. So like we're always doing that as we exist. But like when people just stop and they're like, you know, I'm just totally comfortable. I am. That's what I have an issue with. I have an issue when people are not, you know, not progressing because I don't care if people progress or not. Are, you know, working towards something, working towards their own agendas, or you know, just kind of like building their outreach, right? Affecting others in a positive way. If that makes sense.
No, it makes sense.
You know, and so like I kind of like internally rate people on their significance level that they affect people in a positive way. And it's like, you know, let's just say like you're a homeless person on the subway asking for change. Well, your outreach isn't that strong because you're actually doing like a negative pull of outreach, right? You have like a reverse polarity. You know, not only are you not creating opportunity from yourself, but you're doing a disservice and you're actually creating negative energy on others asking for money. You know, the very interpretation of what it looks like to have a lack of purpose, right, is poverty on both out externally and internally, right? Versus, you know, somebody who's, you know, in their community and they're giving back to their church or they're giving back to a hospital in some way, or, you know, they have a YouTube channel and they're giving advice on it like we do, you know, and we give information out. You know, that's one way that we give back, right? And so there's a really big difference in frequency when it comes to those two situations. On another note, how many times is this lady going to vacuum this rug before it's crystal clear?
No, but I was actually thinking about what you were saying, like the energy stuff, because the thing is, like, actually threes normally all have this want to like create like joy and happiness. It's not just three, it's 2 and 4. All three of them seem to like really want everyone to just like, you know, like you get my point, right? Just really trying to create that energy. Like if you were like on the if you were that hobo like you were talking about, you know, and I'm asking you for your money, you might need that money for your lunch. But you see that I haven't had a lunch in a while and I also don't have a job. So you're like, okay, I'll just give you my lunch. But yet now Daniel's going to be grumpy later because, you know, he didn't have a lunch because he's hungry. And I'm here without a job, eating his, you know, sandwich that he should have had.
Like
Which-
it's different because like if we talk about this very example, like yeah, we need to like when a homeless person is like in need of money and food and resources, like you have to give to them because like they're in a catatonic kind of element in their life where they can't give out because they have no energy to put out. Their car can't move because they have no gas in their car. If you give them that gas and you give them that jump start, then they're good. But like, you know, when you relate it to type 3 and you relate it to, you know, people like asking for money, it's like, why don't you ask yourself for money? And then it may manifest, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And yeah, I didn't mean to say like, you know, I wouldn't help a homeless person, but like, you know,
Yeah. To all the homeless people watching this right now, I or Trey are saying, keep chugging along.
Well, actually,
keep chugging.
Really, really quick. So the thing is, like, the homeless person might actually like need somebody else to create that positive energy by like helping them get back into the world. You know what I mean? So like, I didn't really mean like that wasn't the point I was trying to make, but I think we get the idea.
Yeah.
All right, so before we move into the homeless category, I think it's time to close out of this show. Thanks for contributing your thoughts and tell us a little more about Enneagram 3. So that being said, I hope that everybody enjoyed the content that was in the show. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to any of us regarding Enneagram or anything else. So that being said, thanks so much. Trey, Daniel, do you have any last words before you're executed? Removed.
Any last words?
No, everything was great. Check out our articles, check out our content, up and coming, a lot of stuff coming around. And yeah, what you think, you know, if you want us to do like a personal like question or like you want to do us like a response to a question you have or something, let us know. You know, we're always here to produce content for you guys. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you everybody, and we'll see you next time.